and welcome to another episode of The Unknown Film Enthusiast. After a brief hiatus, we are back during the holiday season.
Our hiatus was enlightening, let me tell you.
Yes, and that is because we have been trying to sit on and kind of contemplate one of the most important films of this holiday season, Star Wars Episode VIII. So, just a brief, we want to talk about it, go kind of through things that we definitely liked, disliked, and kind of looking at the reviews, because this is a movie that a lot of people liked and a lot of people had a lot of issues with. So,
very divisive.
Very divisive film. So let's go around and quickly introduce ourselves.
I'm Dan.
I'm Zach.
I'm Nick.
I'm Jason.
Jason is our lovely addition, a Star Wars expert for this week. So what we want to begin with is the kind of public perception around this film, and we're recording this is what, 2 weeks after 2 or 3 weeks. Okay.
Movie premiered originally with very, very high reviews. Most critics claimed it was one of the best in the series, and to quote Rotten Tomatoes, the plot synopsis is: Star Wars The Last Jedi honors the saga's rich legacy while adding some surprising twists and delivering all the emotion-rich action fans could hope for. And along with this short plot synopsis, reviewers gave it a score of a 91% favorability, and on IMDb it has a 7.6, and on Metacritic it has an 86. Now, I list these numbers not just to brag and say that, oh, it's great, and also I can read. But in addition to this, the audience scores on all of these sites are significantly lower, with the Rotten Tomatoes score audiences being 52% and the Metacritic's being 53%. And we'll get into why there's such a big divide, at least between us.
And I think that talks a lot about why this film, and again, as a Star Wars, I think we're all very much Star Wars fans. This is a movie that you want to go in absolutely loving, and I think that's a big part of it, maybe. And so seeing those, the feedback from both critics as well as your average everyday consumer, it's very interesting to see that very large divide between the critics that are reviewing it extremely favorably, and then the users that are quite literally 50-50. So let's kind of get in maybe to talking just a very little bit about what we got from our perceptions, and then we can kind of go back to the differences, maybe why the critics and the reviewers had such a large divide. Do we want to kind of go through that, or do we want to go through our first talking point, the atypical Star Wars film?
I believe it's best to start off with our first talking point.
Okay, very good. So, when we're talking about how this could be an atypical Star Wars film, walking into the theater, I very much expected, I really did expect to see Empire Strikes Back kind of plot summary once again, knowing that, Star Wars Episode VIII was very much, A New Hope. Did not get that out of the film at all, which is what makes this a very different kind of Star Wars film, I think.
Yeah, but I feel like they almost took too much of the backlash from The Force Awakens and made a movie that was almost too different, to the point where it didn't really feel Star Wars. And we'll get more into that later, but yeah, as much as it would disappoint me to see an exact replica of Empire, I think they went a little too far in the other direction.
So could this be something that's atypical because it's Disney now and they have decided to take it in a different direction, or could it just be, times are changing, it's 2017 and they want to try something new, or we don't know yet. I mean, it could go either way.
Yeah, but at the same time, Disney has released 2 other Star Wars properties and has also had a television series, Rebels, going on, that I know a lot of Star Wars fans still appreciate and value as part of the canon. And there has already been an online petition to get The Last Jedi and everything that happened in it removed from Star Wars canon and have Rian Johnson removed entirely from directing anything else, which, as the internet is known to do, they have overreacted.
I think, honestly, that's honestly absolutely ridiculous. And anything like change.org petitions, they
always work.
And that's the thing, is that immediate backlash, and again, why are they backlashing? It's because they're not maybe appreciating that Star Wars has to change. Like, in terms of going forward with it, Disney is making this into another Marvel-esque franchise of some kind. So maybe that's why they didn't like it, because the potential for the expanded universe in the past was fleshed out through things like books and other comics and things like that. Whereas now Disney is trying to make an expanded universe that happens in a film that they can guarantee will come out every single year. Is it right to do that?
But I feel like also with the originals, a lot of the extended universe stuff was things that were hinted in small references in the movies. So someone mentions, oh, it did the Kessel Run in less than 12 parsecs, and then someone writes a book about the Kessel Run and understanding what parsecs are, or Obi-Wan at the end of, or the beginning of Revenge of the Sith goes, not that stuff in the Nemoidian system, that doesn't count.
Yeah.
And you're left thinking, oh, what does that mean? Not everything has to be a movie. And that's why Disney's also already expecting the Solo movie to not really do that well. And the exact word from the press leakage was it will bomb at the box office.
Oh,
which I don't know about that. But I love Ron Howard. Opie was my favorite Andy Griffith character, and I wish him the best.
I just, in terms of like talking about things like, doing the Kessel Run, that's something that, again, our Lord and Savior George Lucas, I question the actual like viability of him saying, oh, I'm gonna make them say this, sciencey sci-fi mumbo jumbo, but it means something really important. I don't necessarily think that the grand scheme for Star Wars from episode 4, Star Wars wasn't released as episode 4. It was released as Star Wars. Yeah. I question him saying, okay, well, we can take that line and make it into something later in the expanded universe, where now Disney has the forethought to come in and say, we want to make this intentional. So when you say something, make sure it has weight that we can then profit off of it. I'm not saying it's right to profit off of it, but it's necessary.
I don't know if introducing the movie with forethought as the third Star Wars movie makes a lot of sense, because it seems like this movie's trying to set a lot of stuff up, but it also ignored a lot of the things that were set up in episode 7. So we can get into that more as we get into what we liked and didn't like, and just how this affects the rest of the Star Wars saga.
Yeah.
But at this moment, it just feels like a misstep, at least to me.
I mean, how much do you think Disney itself is really prying at the writers and the production of these individual movies? I mean, yes, obviously it's Disney's job to find properties that they think will expand, but they're not going in there individually saying, oh, put in a line about this so we can make a movie about this.
Exactly.
Or,
That's true.
Make it really, really change. I think things are just I mean, Dan, you asked before, is it a Disney thing or is it just a times are a-changing kind of thing? I think times are a-changing. You're right, it's 2017, almost 2018. People are looking for different things.
But I feel like to go against that is Marvel also started the same way, where they had people like Jon Favreau, Kenneth Branagh, and Joss Whedon come in to launch the Marvel Universe, and then after that, as soon as there was anyone who had a distinctive vision or different idea, like an Edgar Wright, they were kicked out for creative differences. They've already also kicked out 2 directors for creative differences for the Solo movie, and I feel like they probably gave artistic freedom to the first 2 or 3 directors, but they still definitely have a mission. Half of Rogue One was reshot, and I don't think that was for, oh, we need to put in these references, but they clearly there is someone steering the ship. And whether it's to the extent of, well, they only mentioned this to make 6 movies about it, I'm not sure. But they definitely have an idea. And to an extent, I think that is going to lessen the amount of creative freedom in later movies. Saying that, I wish this movie had a little bit less creative freedom, because it doesn't fit, at least to me.
Yes, but again, it's another chapter, and you're right. You have to kind of come off and say we're framing this as the atypical Star Wars, because you're right, it is like opening up to it's the 9th chapter of a story, and it's different.
To keep in mind that as we get further and further within this massive series, for things to be changed or want them to be changed is like a kind of like it's not going to happen.
And think about, think about this too. If we rewind back from episode 6 and going back to episode 1, we thought, oh, we have an understanding of what the Force is, and the first major the major backlash was the Force is now, these tiny little biotic things in our blood system that give us the
His
Force.
midi-chlorians were off the scale, Zach, off the scale.
Oh God,
But
he's the chosen one.
But the thing is, it's not like everyone looked at that and with hindsight goes, but that was brilliant. They realized that was a misstep, and then they stopped bringing it up. I feel like using that as a defense of change proves that this is a misstep, because there are ways to do change correctly, and there are some things added in the prequels that make a lot of sense. I do like the whole Darth Sidious thing and just everything to make the Emperor grow to power, and it's a nice, interesting plot of how the boy is corrupted and how the politician does it to him. But it's... no one applauds those specifically for all the things they did different. They applaud the things that did right by the original trilogy. And to go back to what you said is you have to view it as a chapter. You still have to enjoy the chapter that you're looking at. Because if you see the first Episode 4, Star Wars, you don't know that there's going to be so many movies after it, and it is a conclusive start to finish. There's a couple loose ends in there just in case, but it still feels like a cohesive movie. Empire, while it was a little bit more up in the air, they still wrapped a lot of stuff up and showed you a lot of interesting things about the character, made you care. If Empire had flopped, they have at least shown you enough interesting things to keep you wondering, guessing, and just see how far these characters have grown. Whereas I think by the end of Episode 8, everyone feels to be in almost the exact same spot as 7, except there are no questions left to be answered. There is no Snoke, there is no Rey's parentage, there is no doubt within Finn. Poe is still just as careless as he was before, and every single person feels to be, they went from step A to step A, and stuff happened in between, and no one learned anything.
I wouldn't say no one learned anything. I definitely don't think that's the case, because if you look, even with Kylo Ren's character, killing Snoke is a huge act of him being his apprentice. That is a huge character shift. And even though he comes back and then he immediately turns to Rey, which was a huge issue, saying we can do this differently for once. We can together, if we come together, we can actually solve the problems. But we're gonna do it by ruling the galaxy.
Exactly. I feel like every time they started to take a different step, they then backtrack because they remembered, oh, sorry, this is Star Wars.
Yeah.
And it basically undoes a lot of it. And it was very interesting to see Kylo's struggle. It was very interesting in Force Awakens, and then it almost feels like, oh, he set himself free when he kills his own father. And then in this movie, you see that he's still challenged, and he doesn't want to kill his mother. And then he immediately kills his master. He does all this, he goes dark, he keeps getting angrier. You think that maybe there's still a spark of hope and that something can change, and then he goes back to the exact same spot he was. He never goes from...
It's slightly different this time, though, because he kind of took control of that ship, essentially. He got rid of Snoke, the guy who was truly evil and had no hope, which I wish we see more of, but I think, as we know, we wish we saw a lot more of Snoke, but that just kind of didn't happen.
But it didn't feel like, oh, he killed this man so that way he could have freedom. It was basically, if you kill this person, someone exactly the same will replace them, except the person, he's like, I'm going to skip the middleman, I'm going to be that asshole.
But
So
I would say that's even more, that's, honestly, I know that Rey, he did that to partner with Rey. Rey was his salvation, and yes, the way he went about it wasn't phrased right. In that moment, that was one of Rey's, and how failure is this whole I think Rey failed. She should have taken the time, maybe not agreed to rule the galaxy together, but at least to have a conversation. Again, you're not going to get a good film if they sat down and had a conversation.
Yeah.
But if they actually talked out their problems.
Well, that's the thing. It gets too easy at that point, and they want to keep us guessing a little bit here, especially as we just said before. They did leave out. They didn't leave any ends open, kind of. And if they had done that, that would have been even more or less hopeful for what's coming in the next movie.
The issue there is I feel like it feels like less, oh, let's keep them guessing, and it turns into The Walking Dead, where every single episode is stuff happening.
Stuff closing.
And then next episode is stuff happening, and then maybe 8 episodes in, they'll do something. But at this point, it feels I know because I read an article that Rian Johnson wrote this whole script before Force Awakens was even shot. So he had rough character outlines of what everyone was supposed to be, but didn't know exactly how the story fell together or how J.J. Abrams would set things up in Force Awakens. So the movie does feel a little bit disjointed, and it doesn't really answer the questions that people had. It instead dismisses them. And I feel like it's okay to look at that as, oh, he subverted expectations. But he didn't subvert expectations. It was just, this is my homework and I chose not to do it and I did something else. Do you like what I did? He was given math homework and he brought in a diorama of a volcano. The two things are not equal. He did work, but he didn't do the thing that was supposed to be there. And not that it has to be, this is the next Lego brick. Things should be different, but
I think he did the homework, but I think he definitely took the easy route with it.
Yeah, because it didn't feel like difference to differentiate itself. It felt like I need to be different. So it wasn't how do I make this so that it fits in the story? It's how do I make this different? So every single plot point doesn't feel like, oh my god, this is how Star Wars is going to be from now on. I can't believe they've taken it in this direction. And it's interesting to see where it goes from here. It just ends up being, well, why did that happen? And at the end of most of the scenes, by the 2-hour point, this was just Star Wars, the movie of stuff. And I wanted to leave. And
it felt like Spaceballs 2.
Exactly.
That's what I thought. I really thought it was
the switch for more money.
Yeah, and as we get into pros and cons, there is one big thing that I feel like drags this movie down, and that is the sense of humor. And
a little misplaced.
And that's the thing. Star Wars has always had jokes, but they're things that fit in with the story. So Chewbacca laughs at Han when Leia emasculates him, and he says, "Hey, laugh it up, fuzzball." That's funny. The whole First Order coming to a halt because one guy with slick back hair goes, "Holding frogs," doesn't make any sense. It's preposterous. They just blew up 5 planets, and yes, they're toying with him, but if he's some asshole in one spaceship and he flies up, they're gonna shoot him. They're like, oh, he's not big enough to be a threat. Yeah, he is. He blew up the other thing because you thought the janitor wouldn't come back and open the door for you. They have the hindsight, and then they just ignore it. They were given a plan,
Alright,
and
so
then they do nothing with it.
Let's take a quick, before we get on to this, I just want to bring up one more point that I'm wondering your opinion on this. So, you say that Rian Johnson kind of wrote this as the transition from Force Awakens to this was extremely rough. And I do agree with that it was very different films. And I have to circle again back to this whole point of Disney. They're sitting down, Lucasfilm, whoever is doing this, they're sitting down.
Kathleen Kennedy on her own is sitting down.
There's no way in my mind that they don't have the railroad tracks are being set, and they know this is the first movie, this is the next movie, this is the third movie. The writers that they hire are going to take, and it might not be in depth, but the second movie is going to be, you need to at least move, you need to get Kylo Ren to be the leader of the Supreme Order. Figure out how he's going to do that. There's got to be some architecture here, because if there's not,
but
I would be
that
baffled.
makes it feel less like a narrative and more like, here's the thing, I'm sorry, we messed up, we did it. It goes from Star Wars, which was, granted, George Lucas has power of hindsight, and every single time someone's like, well, why'd you do that? He's like, well, it was all planned out from the beginning, which I think is bullshit, because originally Star Wars was about droids, and it was, the whole story was about R2-D2, which is weird.
You gotta give him a little bit of credit, though, because like this isn't Star Wars. This isn't 80s Star Wars. It's 2000s.
We're more focused on the planning.
80s Star Wars. It still felt like by the end of this movie, we know everything that we want to do next, and whether we get to do it, I don't know, but we're going all out. This movie felt like we need to fix the things that we left,
because they're not doing things in order. Like they should. Like it needs to be movie. They need to focus on one movie at a time.
They are.
but
They are.
it
You
doesn't feel. If this feels
It
more
doesn't
like
feel-
it
yeah.
feels like the finale of Lost. Which,
Oh,
good job, J.J. Abrams. You did it twice. You set a bunch of things up and then you left.
But hey,
I'm
now
happy he's coming back.
He's coming
And
back.
we'll see if he knows how to answer things, because we've seen it with Star Trek,
Yeah.
Mission Impossible, now Star Wars. He just comes in, he starts something, he goes, good luck, I'm leaving. And this one, at least he's coming back, and we'll see how it ends up. But it feels so much like we did this thing, we have to fix it, as opposed to this is our grand plan. Because everyone knew that the Iron Man was leading up to the Avengers. In the end, it needs to be this thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an end goal. This feels not at all like that. I don't know where Episode 9 is going. I don't know if I care.
I think I can tell you exactly where it's going. In a grand scheme, not a plot device kind of way.
Mm-hmm.
But here's what it's going to do. It's going to kill off every character from the originals.
Yeah,
Right? They've done a
Yes.
big one, each of these two. So
Yeah.
obviously
Not
Leia-
Chewie.
Yeah, well, Chewie might be the last bastion of hope, but who knows? Leia's gonna be gone. They're setting up for a new crowd. They're basically gonna scrap this whole trilogy, say this was the transition trilogy, to set up for the entire new quintilogy of things that the Disney's, the true Disney Star
I am
Wars.
tired
That's-
of-
I guarantee that's what's gonna happen.
I'm tired of
That's
watching
fair.
movies where they tell me to wait for the next movie. I don't give a shit about Thor the Dark World because I know it's just leading up to Avengers 2. I don't.
Oh, the Dark World, underrated. If you ask me.
It's,
you know what? They're
No,
they're
Thor
gonna
Ragnarok.
bring Jar Jar back. They're gonna-
Jar Jar was.
That was, no, that was no. But no, that's I mean that's what they're doing.
Yeah.
They didn't necessarily care about the overarching story of this one into the next one, because they're just saying, well, next one, this one and the next one don't really matter because they do have the grand scheme. But they know 12 movies down the line, so they don't care about 2 movies from now. They're caring about the bank they're going to be making in 9.5 movies. You know what I'm saying?
it's just sad that the only reason the movie exists is to get to the next movie, and whether there's an end goal.
Disneyfication.
Yeah, it's just.
You know, there were some redeeming qualities though about this film. I think to bring Luke back in the way that they did, I enjoyed that.
I do agree,
there's-
and I believe that leads us into our next section,
Yeah.
where we will discuss a lot of things we liked, and clearly there were things that we did not like, and we'll go into that now.
People are counting on us. The galaxy is counting on us. Solo, we'll figure it out. We'll use the Force. That's not how the Force works.
All right, and now we'd like to enter our segment that we will call Pros and Cons. Misa was All right, now that we've started on the worst note, let's start with cons.
All right, first con, they didn't bring Jar Jar back.
Wait, start with cons or start with pros? Maybe start with pros.
We'll bounce
All right,
around.
let's like okay. Pros. I like the first like laugh out loud like moment that I genuinely had and no one else in the theater had, and it's when I was like, oh, this is great. Was when BB-8 is trying to like plug up all of the different like fuse boxes, and then he just
uses his head,
jams
yeah.
his head. I laughed out loud, but no one else did.
That
I
was a
like,
good.
Unfortunate.
That was a good Star Wars joke.
Yes.
And I like that one.
It's an R2 moment.
Yeah,
It was.
exactly.
So
And the
good.
droids should be humorous.
That's what the droids basically are.
Yeah.
The comic
And just obviously we're doing spoilers. Another big pro to me is the lightsaber fight with Rey, Kylo, and all of the guards
the
around
Praetorian Guard
Snoke.
things. Oh my god,
Snoke.
that was so cool.
So
Yeah.
red. I
It's-
loved it.
Yeah, the coloring was beautiful. The choreography was perfect. When he turns on the lightsaber to hit the guy in the head,
Yeah.
it's
That's
something you
awesome.
always wanted,
That's awesome.
but you never get. And it seems almost too violent.
And like that's one thing I do very much enjoy about like this like era of lightsaber battles is it's actually like functional. It's not them jumping up and doing like
Flipping, yeah.
flips. It's
not-
like
yeah.
It doesn't feel
It's how
like
people
dance
would
fighting.
fight.
Yeah,
It's how
exactly.
people would fight.
It's very
so
gritty.
cool. Yeah, and it's just so impressive. And the scenery of that scene is just awesome. And
Yeah.
that's the other thing too is like, and this gets a little bit more into like who are like the Praetorian Guards, because the theory of them being like part of the Knights of Ren, I don't believe that at all. But it leads interesting. They are highly
it feels
skilled.
yet again like people trying to fit in
Yeah, true.
plot holes, which of course, as we learned from Force Awakens, means nothing.
And it's good to see the amount of motion that we saw in these lightsaber fights, just in fights in general in movies. That specific fight scene did it right compared to, you know, other movies where we see fucking superheroes flying around punching each other, and it's like it doesn't mean anything because they're gonna get right back up and they're gonna be good old dandy fine again.
No one feels invincible.
Yes,
Which is a very, like, I feel like that should not even need to be something that's said, but in so many modern movies, whether it be the Marvel superhero movies, the DC movies, where they have literally killed off Superman and then brought him back to life, even James Bond went from being someone who could die to, fuck it, I'm not even gonna look, I'm just gonna shoot behind me, the people are dead. And it's nice to see a movie that still has that sort of stakes.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's something that's
Huge
it's missing.
pro.
Yeah,
Huge
that is a
pro.
huge pro.
That was a moment that one of the moments where I forgot that I was watching a Disney movie. I was like, it felt I was watching Star Wars, or I was watching like an action flick. You know, I forgot that I was in like, you know, obviously PG-13, right? But it does feel like
It's hard PG-13, yeah.
But those are the moments where it's like, oh, this could be R, maybe.
Yeah.
Like, you know, if lightsabers like splat some blood or something like that, that could be. You know, that's when I forgot that I was really kind of in more of a family movie.
Yeah.
They should hold back on all the fucks so that way they can have that.
I know.
And I also like the one thing that I did very much enjoy too, was they're kind of taking like after the opening crawl, the intro into like them escaping the base. I thought that was very new and interesting of them. That's something I haven't seen before. Is an actual fly down shot after the scroll where they were going from space to the surface of the planet. Have they done that before?
I know they've angled down 2 planets, but they have never gone straight in there.
I thought that was very cool. I
think
enjoyed it.
Every other movie has started with Episode 4 was Tatooine, 5 was, I think it was the Super Star Destroyer. It always zooms in on a ship or a planet.
Not Tatooine, but
Yeah, it was.
what are you talking about?
When it starts, you see the lasers and you see the
Yeah,
Rebel Forerunner,
yeah.
and then Tatooine is right below them. Don't you dare, Curtis.
I thought you meant it started on Tatooine.
Oh, no,
Like,
no,
You started
no.
drinking blue milk. I was like, I don't think that's right.
Speaking of blue milk,
No,
no.
avoid that.
No. This is actually something I liked, not the blue milk, but I like that Luke is not just sitting on an island by himself.
Yeah.
It makes sense that there are other things in the world, whether it's this shot where they angle at the ocean and you see some large Leviathan creature moving, the weird Mother Teresa frogs on the island, the fish that he skewers. It feels like
That fish was prime.
it feels like a place he could live. Whereas like even like Yoda on Dagobah, you're kind of like,
Little chicken things.
yeah. He's really excited for sausage, and there's a bunch of snakes, and that's about it. Another positive, Puppet Yoda.
Oh, great!
Yoda.
I think
Right.
we can
Awesome, awesome, right?
That was
Yeah.
They nailed
It's-
this.
It looked good.
Yeah.
At first, the
was
lighting
so
was weird, and I was like, "That looks a little off." But then when they actually zoomed in, I was like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that's right on."
10 seconds in, it didn't feel jarring at all.
Yeah, it looks good.
All of the Jedi stuff, genuinely
Yes.
on Octu felt pretty
I
good. Just on that planet. I know you have a specific issue with a certain anus of the beach.
Genius of the world. That whole scene leading up to it, I have an issue with.
But yeah, we'll get to that.
I thought it was. I really enjoyed. A lot of people said it was super boring how they spent basically the whole time on the ship, right? How the main plot device is the chase of the ship.
Yeah.
I thought that was really cool and interesting. I think that was a really
different.
I thought that was a really cool thing. Like, and I think they didn't even necessarily need to have the plot arc where they go to the casino planet and like they didn't, and not about.
I think most of us can agree.
Well,
that
no,
they should
they didn't have to go anywhere. I think the whole thing could have taken place in space and on the ships, and it could have been made for an interesting plot. I thought it was super cool to see them like, and that felt dire. There were moments.
What I liked about it was
where
like
you're
it was
"Oh, God."
it was like a collective survival. Like everyone who was on that ship was like, okay, we're in this to survive.
Yeah.
Like
One thing that I would almost hope for, but seems a bit too much for this movie, is if they had done something. This whole sentence is going to seem illogical until I explain it. If they had done something, or is almost like hatefully on that ship. Now let me say, when they first say that, oh, they tracked us through light speed, my first thought was, oh my god, when Finn was a stormtrooper, there's something like smart blood, and they can always track the stormtroopers, and they need to figure out that, or there's a mole, or when there's the power struggle between Poe, Leia, Laura Dern, I don't remember her name, and just all the various people on it. If you saw all of these interactions and them arguing, and it wasn't just get off,
That would have been
I'm gonna
such
punch
a
at you.
better twist than like
Yeah, and it's so. I feel like they did a really good job of keeping all of the drama on the ship, but because you didn't really know most of the characters, or none of them really did much other than yell and then go back to sitting down in a chair, you almost needed the casino plot, no matter how pointless it feels later. But I do agree with you. I did really like that it was all. It felt like a one location play, almost
And
on that
it
ship.
felt dire. I thought it felt like the Titanic in parts. You know, like you're sinking ship. You know, you're wondering how they're gonna get out of this. If you're gonna, they're gonna reach the and then as the support ships are falling off, just kind of floating and being decimated.
Yeah.
Those are pretty cool. Pretty cool shots and stuff. I really.
And I think that leads into also one of the best parts of the movie, which is the hyperspace.
Yes, the
into
hyperspace.
The Star Destroyers, which is just.
I can't wait for that to get a 4K screensaver when that comes out. Like that's gonna be.
Although
absolutely.
interesting, I did very much enjoy that shot. However, we did see. I'm sure there's explanations for it, but obviously in Rogue One we saw hyperspace into a Star Destroyer and just
exploded.
bounced off. And I understand that the
But
cruiser
the
is a much
Star
larger
Destroyer
ship.
Was
Was
came
also
out of
that's
hyperspace.
true. Actually, you're right.
I think
That had
it
more-
wasn't the ship
I see.
hyperspacing; it was the Star Destroyer coming out.
No, they both
Another
were.
thing is,
I think they hyperspace to each other.
also,
Right.
I understand hyperspace is calculated, but there's also the point in Force Awakens where they hyperspace into the atmosphere and then pull out of it. Did they hit nothing? They also immediately crashed into trees.
I forgot about that.
Would it?
I think
That's a plot hole I'm willing to overlook because it feels almost too good to be true. Similar to a plane turning around on a beach on a certain Dunkirk movie.
what I enjoyed so much about this in Star Wars was that
There's two Dunkirk movies.
when the hyperspace happened, it went completely silent. It was like, just look at this shot. You don't need to hear anything to know like what's happening or anything. It just wanted you to look.
That's cool. I said it before. It's something that's never really been done in Star Wars before, in a good way. Like Star Wars usually has obviously one of the biggest characters in Star Wars is the score, right? The music, like everyone knows every tune to pretty much every scene.
Yep.
But that was one of the few moments in any Star Wars movie I think that was silent.
Yeah.
There's never silence. There's never silence in a Star Wars movie, and it's powerful. It feels good. Like
Yeah, and I think that's
it's shocking, honestly.
And it's one of the
That's a
few
good point.
scenes where something serious and plot altering happens, and then they don't immediately cut to a joke.
For this one, yeah.
Yeah, for this one scene, I'll see it again later in the week, and I'll update if needed. But
That's but I think that speaks again. I don't know. Maybe that's also just a sign of like the times and what they're actually capable to do at this point as well. Because that I don't know. It was so. That scene is just it's so freaking crazy. And also too, the other thing I wanted to mention about the pacing as well. Having that ship, and this is something that was both a pro and a con a little bit, was the ship escaping or in that constant escape was a little bit. It was nice to be like, okay, this is happening within a certain time period as well. But then it got me to thinking, okay, well, how long is Rey on this planet with Luke, and how long are they really gone for? Because I like the idea of, you're right, it provides tension, but then it also asks me to question, okay, like, what is the actual time scale of this movie as well, which is something that I had a little bit of an issue with consolidating.
it felt like they were always 30 feet away for 18 hours, which is a little odd.
Hey,
You'd
there's
think
space.
they would
It is.
loop someone
Time's
around. Or, that's another thing, the whole time is relative thing. I'd love for, at one point...
a day on Skywalker Ranch could be 20 minutes instead of
But that's one thing they never touch on. I'd love for at one point, other than obviously like when they fly in and find that Alderaan's missing, I'd love for someone to show up and like on the planet and they're like, no, that guy left like 2 months ago because the time is different.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So should we? Does anyone else have anything super
I like
positive to
I like
say?
near the end. I liked the Luke and Kylo fight. Thought it was cool.
Oh,
Thought it was interesting.
yeah.
It's kind of totally devalued 2 minutes after it happens, but it's cool
Yeah.
when it occurs. It's interesting.
it's-
You get to see Luke be a badass for the first time pretty much ever.
Yep,
Yeah.
that's true.
It's neat.
You're right. That is so
But-
insane. And just like
That was one of the
coming
scenes.
out.
Yeah, that was. I laughed the hardest, and I smiled probably the hardest when he steps out of the smoke after getting shot to shit and just brushes it off. I'm like, that's I like let out a big grin on that. I was like, that's fucking cool. Like, good on you, Luke. Like, that's sweet.
All right. Now back to what you just said about how it was immediately devalued. That leads to at least my biggest issue with this entire movie was every single time something important or valuable happened or emotionally moving, they would immediately undercut it with a joke, which works in some other movies, and Star Wars does have its humor, but it never felt like it fit. And they would put weird scenes.
It's like,
back
just
then.
let
So-
it happen and don't go.
Exactly.
Like just let it happen.
I don't
Yeah.
know,
So yeah, Snoke is struck down. 50 seconds later, BB-8's piloting an AT-ST, and it felt seconds away from like Han Solo ghost popping out behind him, giving him a thumbs up or something. It felt so weird, like or the goddamn Mr. Clean standing behind him. Like by that point in the movie, I was like, anything could happen.
Yeah, it was-
If they told me right now I was watching Star Trek, I believe it.
You're right.
Yeah, like it's just so strange. And like there are obviously like other movies where this happens, but it's never this jarring.
You're tearing me apart, Star Wars.
It's so
I don't know. That's something that I don't think took me necessarily out of the film, but like I guess thinking back to it, you're right that it did try to undercut itself. But it's also, I don't know. In terms of, I was like, oh, that important thing just happened, and even cutting away to seeing, BB-8. Like I was like, as a moviegoer, you're right. Thematically seeing a movie, but I was like, okay, I'm no longer in that place, in that headspace. I'm now with Rey and
You'd understand.
Finn.
but
yeah.
it never let it
Yeah.
sit in with me long enough to care. So the entire time, as soon as I'm about to think, oh my god, I really like what they just did, spoiler alert, Luke has sacrificed himself and done all of this. And then 2 minutes before it, there's a guy who licks the ground and says, salt. And right after that, they leave the planet. There's a joke about rocks, which I think is fine, but it's right after this.
You thought the salt thing was supposed to be a
I don't think it was a joke. I think it showed up so that way they're like, this isn't Hoth.
That's the
this
only
is-
reason they
yeah.
said this is salt. So they're like,
Yeah.
no, it's not Hoth. It's
Yeah.
like Hoth.
We put it at the end. It's not snow. It's salt.
Yeah,
Look at the boxes.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
It's red salt.
Yeah.
The walkers are black now. All right. Right.
Yeah, and then 2 seconds later, Luke has made this ultimate sacrifice. You see the two suns setting,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Oh my God, they have brought it
Yeah, that's
to the
cool.
end." And then everyone else leaves the planet, and you're like, "Everyone's right behind them." Like, they've made no progress. There is less of them, and they have nowhere to go. And whereas at the end of Force Awakens, you're like, "Oh my God, this probably sparked a new." Like, what does Poe say? This is gonna
At the
be
same
the match
time,
that lights the
spark that lights the
lights
world on
the-
fire or whatever.
At the
lights
same
the
time, though,
yeah.
everything
But
that happened, like, is so they could still go on surviving. Like, at least in this movie.
But it didn't
Even if it
feel
was-
the inspiration, because like at the end of Episode 7, they have this massive victory. They've blown up Starkiller Base. So we thought, made the Empire. They've crippled them.
Yeah.
And then as soon as this movie starts, no one even acknowledges that happened. The First Order feels still 1,000 times more prepared, more advanced. All of this, it's like the Republic doesn't exist anymore that they talked about. It doesn't, but there are still obviously people outside those 5 planets that agreed with it, and it feels like all of the inspiration that was brought from this is completely shot down. And Luke even talks about when he's on the planet is, oh, like my legend was blown out of proportion. Because if you think about it, he could only take down the Death Star because the Millennium Falcon was right behind him. He only took down Vader because the other people took down the shield doors, and he kind of convinced his dad, and that was kind of something, but he still almost died right afterwards. And I can understand the sentiment of sometimes legends are blown out of proportion, but it never feels like anyone in this trilogy does anything important because they immediately dismiss it, either with a joke or with not acknowledging it. And it felt like this movie went into production without anyone knowing that they blew up Starkiller Base or that anyone bad was hurt. They barely mention that Han Solo was killed in this. They barely mention anything that happened in the last movie. There's just characters from the movie in it. And that's why it almost feels like, all right, we did the reset, but everyone you know is still here.
Fair enough.
So it's like an episode of The Simpsons. All of the characters from the last one are here, but we're not going to talk about anything that happened. And it's...
I mean, it does try to acknowledge, like, for instance, like, this is the first, to my understanding, is like they're starting right off at the, like, Starkiller Base has been destroyed, and now we're right at the next
because
part.
it starts on the planet that they...
So that is an it's a unique thing, but it's also Starkiller Base itself. It was being built. It had its one moment of glory where it actually got to do something, and then it immediately. So it's like, yeah, they
But it was still
invested
harboring millions of troops, and it was their base of operations, and all of this stuff is mentioned, and they show the big war rally on there, and this is their pride and glory. They have their Nazi salute. They have all of this stuff going on there. And then it's all blown up, and you're like, oh my god, they did it. Obviously very similar to the end of Episode 4. Except in Episode 4, the Empire's scattered. They're struggling to get everything to work again, to the point where they can't even track 100 people. And it takes them months, if not years, to find this one little base. And also, by Episode 6, it's only because they've had years to recover that they're anywhere near where they were in Episode 4.
But I would also say too, yes, Starkiller Base may have appeared to have been their crowning glory.
So you're saying they're building a second one?
I mean, but Snoke wasn't on the base. To our knowledge, he was never there. I mean, he could be in his.
The Emperor
big
wasn't
ship.
on the Death Star either.
The thing is, the Emperor was on the Death Star.
He was on the Death Star
too. Yes, but okay.
But he never showed up for the first one. So does that mean in this one, Kylo Ren's not going to be on Starkiller?
For all we know,
it could be on the other
it could be in Asgard is not a place; it's a people.
Okay, that's about a way of
right.
life.
Hold on,
that's
he's
a
right,
way
though.
of life. They still lost everything. The people in Asgard need to recover and find a new home. The First Order's like, no, they blew up our planet. We still have everyone. Is Hank here? I love Hank.
But nothing in Episode 8 tells us that even though they have a lot of troops in Starkiller Base, the First Order is much larger and more powerful than was ultimately revealed in Episode 8. Like, this little rebellion, the Resistance or whatever, is said it's underfunded to fight what the actual true evil is, because the rebellion, or the new republic, however they phrase it, is still in their formulating years, and they're not willing to expend this war effort because they're still trying to unify everybody post Empire. So I think that this First Order is a much bigger vacuum of power that is being filled in by Snoke and all of these loyal troops that they come out of nowhere, or they're abducted as children, whatever it is, but they're much larger than just Starkiller Base. They have to be if they have this huge ship.
I understand that.
This planet.
But it feels more like one guy died than they blew up the whole planet.
The issue isn't Starkiller Base. It's the way that they go about it, right?
Yeah.
It's that every big thing that they blow up feels like, who cares? And I understand that it's a drop in the bucket, right?
But they blew up the Dreadnought, and then they blew up this whole legion of ships at the end of Last Jedi.
And it feels like that on both sides too.
Yeah.
They lost their fleet, right? The Resistance lost their fleet, and they're just like, we're still like, who cares, right?
Yeah.
They basically
wag their finger at Poe.
And
then they keep going.
Basically, they lost a couple bombers, or you're only 10 bombers, which apparently are the strongest thing in the galaxy. By the way, still, it happens both ways. Like, what Nick began with was that every substantial moment seems insignificant. That there feels like there's no impact. There's no greater impact in the entire throughout this thing. That's what I think of. Going back real quick to what you actually totally began your statement with talking about the comedy, how the comedy kind of undercuts everything.
Sorry, I got too angry.
I know. Besides that, for me, the comedy. So Star Wars has always been cheesy, right? None of the jokes are like, "Oh, that's a good one." It's like, oh, who you calling fuzzball, or who, it's like, oh, okay, it's funny, like, or it's stupid. The jokes, I feel like in The Last Jedi felt less cheesy and more childish. They really felt immature. Like they're like just the obvious, like, and they were like, and there were some good ones, but a lot of it just felt very like slapstick, very kind of like just childish. I thought it felt very, very juvenile as far as like.
I mean,
comedy goes.
Holding
that
for
was
Hux
my biggest issue.
literally
Holding for Hux.
ends with a "Yo Mama" joke. I'm on the phone, want to talk to his mom. And it's like, what are you implying?
Yeah, I don't
Think
know.
about the context of all of this.
Exactly, and
That-
I can
if-
imagine I can imagine a bunch of 14-year-olds thinking that's hysterical. But
Yeah.
So then, what did you
But
guys
as
think?
brilliant
but as
fingers,
an
yeah.
intellectual,
I watched Rick and Morty. I have a very high
Rick and Morty. It was nowhere near as nuanced as Richard and Mortimer.
Now, my other question is, what did you guys think of the joke when Luke is instructing Rey to like reach out with the Force and like the little leaf
I
came
think it's
by?
okay. I thought that was an alright joke.
That doesn't bother me. The thing that bothers me, and I've been arguing this for a week. End of Force Awakens. You see Rey holding out the lightsaber. You see this face on Luke like, oh my god, my world's been destroyed. You think, oh, it's because Han's dead. It's because he knows that his friends are in trouble. And then this movie starts and he's just crazy old man. First thing he does, toss the fucking lightsaber behind him. Which I get is almost, it's supposed to be dismissive of the Force.
Yeah.
But what it ends up doing is leaving a bad taste in your mouth because you had all this build up from this moment. And you're like, this is going to be powerful. If Luke had grabbed the saber and dropped it, or if he had said something along the lines of, this is not the way of life I choose to be, or if he had said the Jedi must die at that point, it's time for the Jedi to end, that would have impact.
Been better, yeah.
It's
I
literally,
agree.
it happens for a joke.
Yeah.
And there are other things that happen in there, and it's fine that it's a joke. He kind of acts like Yoda from Episode 5, where he's like, sausage, and then he beats the shit out of R2. And I like that, because it's almost like a callback to it. But you can't just have him...
Yeah, because when it comes to something as important, like, as the lightsaber, something that was almost like, it represents, like, the Jedi... like
That's
in a massive way.
That's you putting that implication on the lightsaber.
That's 7 movies telling me what a lightsaber is, and I understand that they can say it doesn't have all of this meaning.
Yeah.
But you can't say it has no meaning.
Yeah.
Well, can I just say also, I mentioned this before, that was his lightsaber.
Yeah.
What? Like, remember in The Force Awakens, Rey touches it, right? And gets like all like feels like this energy and sees the dark side and all whatever. I don't remember. I haven't seen it in a while. He should have touched that and felt the years and understood that this was what he used. This is what he fought his father with. It was his father's lightsaber, and he should have been like, "Where the hell did you get this? Are you kidding?" He should have lost his freaking mind. He was like, "I thought this was lost in Cloud City, right?"
Yeah.
They never retrieved that.
Where's my hand?
Yeah, but he should like even if he's dismissive of it and doesn't want to be a part of it, he should have freaking lost it when he saw this random chick come up with his lightsaber.
Yeah.
Right? That's insane. And maybe he saw it coming. Maybe we're supposed to infer that he's so powerful in the Force, he saw her coming, basically, right?
And I understand what you're saying about him being like very strong with the Force, maybe being able to see Rey or knowing that Rey's coming to the island. But we're also later on revealed that he has closed himself off to the Force.
That's right. Yeah.
So when the lightsaber's handed to him, I mean, is it necessary that there is a lightsaber flashback? And you're right, seeing the object itself could have inspired some, memories with him. But also, his life, like he had that lightsaber for 4 years. I don't know the timeline exactly, but his life after the Death Star or Death Star 2, is with his own lightsaber, with his own legacy. He's left his father. All that stuff is resolved for him. This isn't an heirloom that he obviously necessarily has to treasure.
So
it's cool, but it's dead to him.
Keep in mind though, you say he closed himself off for the Force, which he definitely did there out of the line, but at the same time, he still kept like the Jedi teachings in the book.
That's
Also,
he didn't
Rey
keep them.
was
They were
closed
there.
off from the Force, and when she touched it, She felt the Force.
She wasn't closed off from the Force.
Whether it was knowingly or unknowingly, she wasn't fully there. And, yeah, he only had the lightsaber for a couple of years. It was also his father's lightsaber. It's just...
I honestly, I can understand from his point of view, that saga of his life is over. And even think about his mental state.
Oh, okay.
Anything from the past, he's like, this is only has ever brought me pain and suffering.
Especially
and
after
coming and presenting to me
especially
now?
after going through that whole thing, like with Ben Solo, and like how like he was like teaching him whatnot. Like that was totally new to me, and that kind of caught me off guard. But you're right. Like he did not want anything to do with it anymore at the time.
It's not an heirloom that necessarily has to have a positive.
It doesn't have to, but it
I still
doesn't
don't.
have
I
to
still
have a
yeah.
positive
or it doesn't have to.
thing.
I don't
His
like.
reaction
when-
is appropriate. Then he's like, "This is trash." Like,
Yeah, I still
But
don't.
it's not
I
like
don't
he
like
touches
that.
it,
Yeah.
feels it, and drops it. It's... I'm not even dealing with
I know.
this.
I
And
don't
then he
even
throws it
like.
behind him.
I still
That's-
don't like the
but it's-
reaction. I don't. Yeah.
that is him. But then he also does. He also says, "I'm not dealing with this for the next 20 minutes of the movie," where he's walking around the island giving shit to Rey. He's
Yeah.
just like,
I
it's
didn't think
in
any of that was
line.
appropriate either, to be honest.
Yeah.
I still.
His introduction felt inappropriate, but when they actually started getting into the Force, I was fine with that. I liked his whole... You saw something you wanted and you didn't even flinch. You went immediately for it. You didn't question what the end goal was or what would bring you here. And I liked that there are all these sides to the Force, because a lot of times it's just shown as good. If you're good, you have no fear, you have no anger, you have no hate, you have none of this. But it shows that there's always temptation to go to the other side. And there's no perfect way, because you see how Rey struggles and you see how Kylo struggles. And it gave more dimensions to the Force. But it just... The way he's introduced, it just feels like such a waste. Especially when... As soon as Force Awakens ended, I was like, hell yes. We're finally going to get to see whether he wants to train her or not. He knows that he has this responsibility because he is the last Jedi.
Yes.
They refer to him as that in the Force Awakens opening crawl. And you can see how this should go down. I was hoping for Kill Bill Volume 2 out of this movie, where you just see Luke twirling his mustache and doing flips and shit and teaching her how to do stuff. But it doesn't end up that way. But I don't have an issue with that part. It's just how they handle everything. Because in all intents and purposes, this is a good movie. I just don't think it's well told. And this is something I've heard online. I appreciate the message more than I like the way that they showed it to me. So I understand the failure, the questioning yourself, the understanding what is real and what is fantasy and all of that, but it never feels like it fully connects. It's a movie full of trying. And there are other movies that do things like that better. Yeah. Logan, the way the comic books were presented, as it shows, this is just fantastic. You can't believe everything you hear. Sometimes what really happens is much worse, and you get the recognition for things, and people see you for more than what you are, or you become something you can't live up to. And I feel like that's where Luke is coming from. But if you look at a movie like Logan, you see how impactful it can be, because they didn't make a joke with a leaf or tossing something behind afterwards, and there was no rhino titties. There's so much. What bothers me more, because I didn't hate the movie, it's so close to being what it should have been that it's frustrating. Because they did so much right, but they did it in the wrong way. And it skirts the line the entire movie. And I feel like that's one of its biggest detriments is it's not great and it doesn't suck. If there's a movie like Attack of the Clones where it's fun to watch I hate sand, it's coarse and rough, it gets everywhere, and this movie has lines like that. And it also has scenes like Straight Out of Empire or A New Hope or all these the much better Star Wars movies, but it falls so perfectly in the middle that it's hard to love it. It feels, if they had gone all out in either direction, it could have been phenomenal or it could have been a disaster. But it falls so perfectly down the middle that it's nothing.
I definitely don't think it's nothing. And
nothing is obviously.
Yeah, I know you're going.
I'm trying. There's
a little hyperbole.
Relative nothing, right?
Yeah, I'm like like another like strong thing from Luke's perspective as well. Like one of the most powerful things I think they did was the flashbacks to his to the Jedi school that he was trying to build, especially dealing with the when he tried to or attempted to kill Ben or Kylo Ren. That was so powerful. It's like seeing that same scene 3 times and just the nuance, like the nuance of the difference. That's extremely powerful because it is playing back into what this movie as a movie is about. It's like, think about how you remember things actually happening personally, and then thinking about how you remember like these pop culture phenomenons as well. And I know it's not trying to be that meta, but if you read into it enough and you bite onto that bait, you can, that's extremely powerful. And then I also think another big thing that we talked about was the portrayal of the Force. They are entering like a territory that is like too philosophically challenging for people to understand that it's not just black and white. Like, and as a Star Wars film,
I love that.
It's hard to tell that to an audience.
But they're doing such a good job of showing that, but doing it sandwiched between 2 very messy things. And I love the concepts. I love what they're trying to do. I love all the things they did differently. But at the same time that they're introducing all these different things, they're just putting something in there that undercuts it. And whether it's the jokes, whether it's the unnecessary plot scenes that... Because there are obviously, for every difference that you make, things don't work. Mm-hmm. There are still a number of things in this movie that don't work. There's one in specific I'd like to get to later, but I just want to get through all of this first. But it's just...
I'm having trouble remembering something specific, and I wonder if one of you guys can tell me. Did Rey and Ben, did they talk at all about Luke's training in him and all that? Did they? Those
training,
2 specifically.
But Kylo does mention...
Did he tell you what happened?
Did he tell you what happened?
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Good.
And I like the Rashomon, here's what happened, no, here's what happened, no, here's what happened, and just seeing how all the perspectives fall in line. And it leads to another question of, I kind of hope that this isn't the case, but when he just goes, your parents were nobody. Is he saying your parents are nobody, or is he lying? Because he needs her to believe that she needs him.
Well, I think the message of that line is, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
right.
And that's
Who cares?
That's my favorite
that's what
part.
they're trying to get away from. Yeah. They're trying to get away from, because like obviously Luke is Darth Vader's son. That's a big deal. They're trying to get away from your parenthood doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You are your own person.
Which brings us back to the whole, as we were talking about before, the big black pit. When she goes down there and like she's asking, where are my parents or whatever, and we see the reflection and it's just not there. The answer's not there, which I liked. It was a good kind of them getting away from it.
Well, it's a Harry Potter mirror of whatever.
Oh,
said.
Yeah, right. Where it's like it shows you what you want most in the world,
Exactly.
and what she thinks that she wants is to know what her parents are.
Yeah.
What really she wants is she wants power. She wants something with her. She wants some sort of closure with herself. That's what she wants. She wants balance within herself. Really,
Yes.
That's kind of thing.
And that's it. Visually, it's stunning, and I love the way they did it.
Yeah, I love that
The issue
scene.
is, if it had been this internal conflict, that'd be something. If she had not literally fallen into the bunghole of this island, I'd be like, I would have liked it better. But the thing, because she sees that, and it literally it's there, and like you see it in her mind, and you're like, oh, is this like what the dark side presents itself to as her? Mm-hmm. And then she rappels down, and no, it's this thing that's actually in the island, and that was a little bit jarring because I was like, oh, I thought this was a personal struggle, but no, there's a literal hole to the dark side.
But that's been that's also Star Wars.
Yeah, that's I do like it. Reminds me of the scene in Dagobah when they go into the cave and then Luke fights himself. But it felt a little bit different, and that's not a complaint. What I do have a big complaint about, I'm sure most of you can agree with me here. Cue the 1978 Superman theme. Was Leia flying through the sky after being blown out? I did hear a theory about this, but I'd just like to go through, what did all of you think of that first?
I thought that was a beautiful scene to send Carrie Fisher out amongst the stars because she had passed away in real life. and I was like, she's all like, she was glowing, like the star, like whatever was happening to her skin, like freezing into crystals. I was like, that's how you do it. And then her eyes opened.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
And her hand twitched.
Yeah.
And,
the thing is like, I don't know. She was never never trained in the Force. I understand she's very much Force attuned, but I always got it more as like sensitive to others' thoughts that she's close to.
I think
I don't know.
it feeds into the overarching theme that they were trying to do for this movie and what they're trying to get thing is that everyone can use the Force. They're trying to say that everyone is Force. It's not the Jedi. The Jedi are dead because the Jedi never really existed. The Jedi were just people who had special training. Everyone can use the Force if you just believe in yourself. Seriously. That's what I think. That's what they're trying to get at.
I can agree with that, but I
I've been
can't
trying
agree
for
that
so
someone
long,
who has
though.
never done anything
No, I
can
don't
shoot
no,
themselves.
I'm
in the
not
front. Yeah.
I'm not saying I agree with it
Yeah.
because I think that scene is the worst thing in Star Wars. Every single Star Wars movie, every single TV show, comic book, anything. I think that is the single worst thing in Star Wars, personally. But I do see where they're going with it. I understand what they're trying to get at.
And that goes back to.
And if
this-
anyone's gonna do it,
Yeah.
might as well be Leia, right?
This movie's one big try, and it never does anything. One theory I did hear about
Okay.
when I read, because I'm a reader.
Yeah.
2 times on this
Stop
podcast.
bragging.
Is that right before that scene? I also have to complain about the editing, but I'll get to that. Right before that scene, you see Kylo Ren almost shoot at her, and then another blast goes past him and blows her out.
Yeah.
One theory I saw is that she doesn't push herself, Kylo Ren pushes her back into the ship. That would be interesting, except she says up, up, and away, and moves her hand. So it doesn't work. Another thing is, if she had flown out, you focus on her body, and then she does it, that would almost be interesting. There's 2 scenes in between that. So it cuts from explosion, you're like, did they really just kill her off screen?
Yeah.
Then I'm gonna talk because I'm Laura Dern. Then I'm Hux. I'm this.
Admiral Holdo, by
Here's all these things.
She's out there for 15 minutes.
Yeah,
basically.
she's out there for a while. Then it cuts back, and then she flies back in. And that was, oddly enough, didn't hurt as much going in because of all the spoilers I avoided. Somehow I knew that Leia was gonna fly, which I don't know how. Of all the things people said to me, that was the only thing I saw. But yeah, that was just. So
And no tears for Akbar.
no tears for Akbar.
Come on.
Oh, man.
I know
That's the biggest trap of this movie.
it would have been fan service, but if like
Oh, no.
if at some point like there had been like a fake surrender or like something like that, and Akbar just turns and goes, "It's a trap," then dies.
Here's the thing. They tried
over the floor.
They tried very, very hard to not fan service.
Yeah.
I think you need a little. Come
Yeah.
on, for
Yeah.
a property like Star Wars, the biggest property in the world, right? Probably.
Probably.
They gotta let you know you like it.
Give
Yeah.
me 1 or 2 one-liners
Yeah.
or like a little something to wet my whistle. Come on, like
Yeah.
you know, I wouldn't have minded. Like yes, that's
No,
cheesy and
yeah.
dorky, but you're right. I would have loved a little.
It's
It's a trap. Yeah. It's a trap. That would be sweet. I would have loved that. And they come close in a couple scenes.
Yeah.
You know, like in the moment where during the Luke and Kylo fight, where he turns off his saber and he says something basically along the lines of, "If you strike me down now."
Oh,
it's
yeah.
more-
Yeah.
I was like, that felt cool. It felt like it's
A
cyclical,
callback,
right? It's
yeah.
all
Yep.
all of Star Wars is kind of a circle. That felt really cool.
One thing I just thought of now, because I was thinking of the ways The Force Awakens did it, is there's the point, I guess Han Solo doesn't understand the Force, but in Episode 7, Finn goes, "Oh, I know how we'll get in. We'll use the Force." And Han Solo goes, "That's not how the Force works." And then according to this movie, that's how the Force works. You could just will it. So,
Oh, man.
yeah. The more you learn.
Well, okay.
All right, and now that we've gone through the pros and cons, we'd like to just briefly discuss the future of where we think Star Wars is going and what lasting impact this will have on the universe as a whole.
Here's some money. Go see a Star War.
And I think maybe a good place to start for this is I want to kind of go back to Jason's point from earlier about how maybe now the Force is for everyone, like the Jedi. And like, I still, for me, there has to be a mysticism behind who can and cannot use the Force. I'm happy that little slave, casino boy is one of the chosen one. But if they're all, if him and his
sounds
whole
so
friend
sinister.
group have the Force, I'm not gonna be happy
Glad you
about
can use the
that.
Force to push the couch shit
Yeah.
into the corner now, but
Might feel a
he
little
doesn't have to
every-
use his hands anymore.
If everyone has the Force, no one has the Force kind
Yeah,
of
who
thing.
cares, yeah.
Where it's not anything special.
Mhm.
And it is, like, there's something uplifting about Luke learning that, oh, I have these powers, I can do this, and just the bright-eyed thing.
Well, especially after a generation of no one's has this.
Yeah.
There's no Jedi existing for 20
Exactly.
years.
And, like, that's a good concept, but yeah.
Well,
So-
it's gonna be, if everyone's a chosen one, it's gonna be who are the ones that are willing to go out and make the change happen in the
Well,
universe that are actually
that's
able
exactly
to use
what
it.
it is. You're totally
Yeah.
right. It's a because and that kind of ties into what you were talking about earlier. Is how it's 2017, and what's the theme of like kind of now it's up to you, right? You are
Exactly.
you do yourself,
And-
and you go. It's up to you to go out there and be the hero, right?
And it ties into the whole thing we were talking about before, how like it is a collective. It was everyone on that ship as a whole. Like,
Asgard is a people.
Yeah, Asgard is
Right?
a people.
And yes, I do get that. But then, okay, here's the other question then, going forward. If the Force now, and it's like, do it for yourself, be an individual, you don't have to look into the past to make a change, you can go forward to make a change, but then you have Rey, who still has the books of how to, this is the Jedi Order's beliefs, and, I mean, do you need those, or I don't know.
Also, another fear
it's
is,
training.
is everyone just going to do the Vader-Kylo thing? Because if no one knows history, you're just going to repeat the same thing, where one person wants it so bad they want to control the universe,
I mean-
one other person decides, well, this isn't the right thing to do, and it creates an endless cycle of
The
the
dichotomy.
exact same.
I mean,
Black
do
and
you
white.
need the Bible, Zach?
Yeah.
We all need the Bible, Dan.
The Lord's book.
Go see Mother, out on Blu-ray and digital now.
I mean, but the thing is, they in the movie, when you had, Yoda summon the will of the Force to eradicate a tree that held the knowledge. Like, obviously, I mean, did he, as Yoda, know that the books were still in there? You'd have to assume that he, as the Force, would know that the books are out of there. He was just trying to do that as a symbol to Luke. That's also another thing we should probably discuss over Ken, but
That's right. I forgot about that.
they're trying to get rid of this past as being, the past is important for what it is, but it shouldn't define your future. Be an individual, be your hero, but do what is right. But there's no one exactly at this point saying, well, what is right, what is wrong? I don't know.
Here's my take on the future of Star Wars. This movie flips the script. I really think it does. I think, regardless of, I think enough people enjoyed it where it's going to totally change the landscape of Star Wars forever.
It did have the biggest week-to-week box office drop-off of any Star Wars movie ever.
Well, I don't
Just
know.
saying.
I don't know. I think it's totally going to flip the script on what Star Wars means. What I think they're really going for, as I mentioned before, Jedi's dead. Everyone's a Jedi. They're really kind of going for the gray side, right? It's not the light side or the dark side. They're going for the gray side. That's kind of what we saw with the Kylo Rey issue. They both had flip flops. There's a point where either of them could have gone either way, right?
Yeah.
One could go, and so it kind of, the theme is that there's no right, there's no wrong. Everyone has their all opinions are valid in a way, and
No one's the villain in their own story.
Nothing's black and white, and everything's gray. Because I think they're also I think they're a little tired of the same story over and over. It's the flop is always the twist. Like, who's gonna go to the dark side? Who's gonna go to the light side? Like, who's gonna flip side? Well, now they're gonna nilch the whole sides thing to kind of open up, and hopefully, I mean, I think that's not even a bad idea. Opens up to a new. If there's no light side, dark side necessarily, it opens up to a whole new era of possibility,
Opportunity for storyline.
for different stories,
Yeah.
for different interesting things. I think that's truly where they're looking for and where it's headed.
It would be interesting to see, and I don't know how they, but again, like, it creates a lot of complexities that I don't know if they can resolve in, a film. It's like, is it
Good thing
possible?
they got 12 more.
That's true. But are you able
I know
That
it's a bummer.
frustrates
to
me, yeah.
use, if you're gonna no longer have the Force being a light side, dark side, are you going to be able to, you know, shoot lightning out of your fingertips and laugh maniacally for the right reasons? You know, it's going to be interesting to see. Can the dark side be used for good? Can the good be used for dark? Or
Well,
for
it
evil?
comes back to the idea of what is. I mean, this
What
is
is good and
yeah.
bad?
Well, what is good and bad? What is light and dark? I mean, like in Star Wars lore, that necessarily says the dark side is bad.
Yeah.
They're just they get power through something else.
That's true. Yeah.
I refer everyone to the subreddit, The Empire Did Nothing Wrong.
Wow, that's
Where-
that's like Holocaust deniers.
Well, no, because they explain how these ragtag groups of militants go in and
that's
just
funny.
keep blowing up their spaceships.
That is fun.
But yeah, I get that it's all about perspective and just not.
But when
Not
Star
just-
Wars is your moral center, that's
I
gonna
built
be
my
the-
life around
Ain't
this.
it? Hey, listen. Man,
Yeah.
This is it's religion to some people.
Yeah,
It
and
really
there
is.
are literal people who you think back to the first Star Wars, and that created a whole generation of visual effects people who wanted to make movies, people who wanted to write stories, people who wanted to go into sci-fi.
People in NASA.
Yeah, exactly.
Aerospace engineers and people want to be pilots and stuff. Not even joking.
I
There's plenty of
can't- yeah.
engineers who
Were
wanted
inspired.
who were inspired by Star Wars. Yeah.
I don't know if I can see Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, making anyone make that change within themselves.
I don't know.
And granted, obviously, I'm old. I found my way in life, which is nothing. But yeah,
in a way though, it is. I can very much see a very young impressionable kid. As being, oh shoot, like I don't know what right or wrong is, like, and they're just hitting the surface of that. But whether they know what right or wrong is, they're still being empowered in some way to, if you're gonna actually have your own passions, like it is very much saying, as you keep coming back to, this is your fight. You like take it upon yourself.
Yeah, they're going to be
the
inspired to
change.
actively make a
Yeah.
decision for better or worse, whatever that might mean to them.
It's not exactly make a decision to become a pilot or a NASA engineer, but it does in a 2017 world, the question of morality, trying to get that to, and if that's Disney's mind washing us, brainwashing us.
I mean that's their political agenda or whatever.
Exactly.
You know.
Which I could totally
There were a
see.
lot of anti-Semitic.
yeah. Where's Watto? Yeah.
Was he Jewish?
I don't know, Andy.
That was a good one.
Yeah. Little Annie. But yeah, the thing is, I hope that that's the message everyone gets out of this. But it falls back to, I like the message, I don't like the way they did it.
Yeah, I mean,
And I really hope that they work with what the groundwork that they've given. And this movie serves as a good, if this had been episode 7, I think people would have been worried about what episode 8 would have been.
Mm-hmm.
This one, I feel like it almost leaves like a clean slate where a lot of stuff can happen. My fear is they're just gonna be like, oh, some people didn't like it, maybe we should just go back to the thing.
I think above all else, whatever you have to say about this movie, Star Wars Episode 8 is far and away the most accessible Star Wars ever. For anybody. Anybody can go in and watch this movie and enjoy it. I truly think it's far and away, of all the Star Warses, it's the most accessible for the average person. My mom, who's never seen a Star Wars before, went and watched this
Oh, really?
The other day.
That's pretty interesting, actually.
And liked it. She's like, it was cute. It was good. It was nice.
that's-
New Star Wars fan, quote unquote,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But, still,
At the same time, I feel like this is the most entitled thing to ever say. Do we want that?
well,
It's
yeah,
not
I
as
was
good.
gonna say,
And that's where I think a movie like Blade Runner almost went too far in the other direction, where Blade Runner did everything that it should have done. It exceeded expectations, it exceeded what it should have been, and it
And no-
pleased critics and fan base, and
no one saw it.
No one saw it.
Yeah.
So-
Well, I was gonna say, just real quick, is that what we want, right? We were talking very, very briefly about how Star Wars is like inside me, right? Like I love Star Wars, and some people like obviously they're creepy.
Yeah.
I think that's where we see the biggest divide here is that a lot of people love Star Wars, right? And obviously they changed it around. And I think a lot of it comes down to authority, right? Well, I think a lot of people are looking and saying, who the hell is this Ryan Johnson coming in and telling me, like, he rewriting the Bible, like,
yeah.
being like, this is what it is, and it's true, and we have to take it as true because it's a Star Wars movie, right?
It's canon.
It's
Yeah.
canon. I think a lot of people are having an issue with necessarily being told that this is like what it is, and basically having their sacred text rewritten in front of their eyes.
Yeah, exactly.
By someone who has no authority to do so, right?
Yeah.
Brian Johnson, like who?
But that's,
And that's I feel like that's where like Rogue One, people love it, people hate it. If Rogue One is bad, no one's gonna be like, you ruined Jyn Erso for me.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
no one knows who Jyn Erso is.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can understand people saying that's not my Luke Skywalker. But at the same time,
Hashtag.
you can. It doesn't. I feel like it's wrong, but almost necessary to say it doesn't ruin the other movies. It does kind of create an issue lasting. It's not like Alien Covenant where they explain the science behind the xenomorph and it kind of makes you go, okay, well I guess Alien isn't that scary anymore because we know how everything was made and it kind of gets rid of the mysticism. But it's just, get over it. Like I'm someone who's not a huge fan of what they did. But I immediately went home and watched Empire because I was like, well, I know I like this because I can separate the two things. You don't have to love X-Men Apocalypse to be like Days of Future Past was great.
No one loved X-Men Apocalypse.
Yeah. There are some people who loved it because it was just pure schlock and is nothingness. But yeah, it's I'd love to see that this ushers in a whole new era of what they do with Star Wars stories. I just hope they take a little bit greater care next time, because while I feel this is a great artistic vision, I don't feel like it's the best direction for Star Wars to go into. They gave a lot of freedom, and it gave someone who has loved Star Wars since they were a kid the ability to write their own Star Wars movie, but does take a little bit of away from those old movies. But it's just, I don't know. Is it a good movie? Yes. Is it the right movie? I don't know. I'm curious to see in 30 years, similar to Empire, if people look back at this and go, this is the one that changed it. This is the one. People were divisive when it came out. It's the best.
Yeah.
And I can't personally see myself doing it because it's not about the story. It's about the way they handled everything in it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I could possibly say this is the best Star Wars movie just because the comedy, just the pacing of it, the editing seemed a bit rushed. It's a fine story, but it's not the best made movie.
And I do agree with that. And the thing is I definitely enjoyed this, but then again, coming out of the theater, I was thinking this is too much. It's too complex.
I wanted it to stop, and that's never.
Same.
It's one of the few blockbusters, and I feel like it's almost sacrilege to put this in the same boat. When I watched Suicide Squad,
Sacrilege.
last half an hour, I just wanted to go.
Sacrilege.
And in this movie, I was sitting there and I was like,
You've blasphemed.
this is too long.
I mean, the movie ended 5 times.
Yeah, the movie,
too.
and it wasn't.
There were
yeah.
4 different possible
Yeah.
endings.
And it wasn't like Dark Knight where you're like, oh my god, they caught the Joker. There's an hour left. It was like, what the hell is this? Like, yeah, we're done. Salt. Like that's, and yeah, I like it, but there's no way I could say that I love it in good conscience. I hope to look back fondly on it, but I can't in this moment.
I enjoyed the movie, but it was a lot of information in a very little amount of time. But it's also because I was reading into a lot of it, what was going on, and then I really like
But
the
is
phrasing.
that not what you're supposed to do?
It is what you're supposed to do,
Yeah.
but then it's like also too is like if Star Wars Episode 7 left us with all these questions, I have a lot more questions in terms of meaning. Like I'm like, how are we gonna actually figure out the Force now that it doesn't have one side or the other? Like that is huge. Like I'm dealing with that in my real life, and like that's the thing. And like stuff like that is extremely. And again, it's too complex for what I think a Star Wars film is supposed to be. But it's something where it's like I can't wait for like the Force Bible to come out and for me to like read it and be like, finally I get it.
Those books, those sacred texts.
Right? That would be really
what
cool.
What the hell's in those?
It'll be like Tales from the Beetle in the Bar.
I can't wait for that release. But that's the thing is, it was a good movie, and I do think it's it does flip the script as you said, and it also does provide a lot more interesting questions aside from just this is a father-son tale, this is a bad evil story. I don't know if they're going to be able to follow through with that in a powerful and meaningful
Yeah.
way in the next film. 12 films down the road, it's really gonna pay off.
We'll see. Yeah, hey, man,
But
that's the long con. Disney's all about that long con.
very true.
Long ago in a galaxy far, far away, they made a movie.
Is it still long ago? I'm wondering. I wonder at some point if Star Wars is gonna catch up to our time. Like,
And we're so far away.
it doesn't matter. Like,
Well,
like,
they'll land, and it'll actually be in the third age of our Earth, which
That'd
is
be
Middle
sweet.
Earth, and then
that'd be sweet. They caused the fall of Rome.
Oh my
It was
god!
Ray or whoever.
They come out of a black hole, they find Murph.
Oh, God.
All right. Any final thoughts, gentlemen? Or
I just hope we left with more questions than answers.
I,
I think that's fair to say we did.
in the words of the immortal Willem Dafoe, Godspeed, Spider-Man.
Peace.